Hi, Bridget. I'm so excited to have you on the Awaken Feminine podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. So, Bridget is a mindfulness teacher, a board certified hypnotherapist, a self-love success coach, and the author of 5-Minute Me Time. Discover how self-love microsteps relieve stress and creates more joy. I'm really excited for our conversation today and for you to share your love and wisdom with us all on this episode. So, welcome, Bridget.
Thank you so much, 𝐁𝐫𝐢𝐠𝐢𝐭𝐭. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I just love all the work that you're doing here on your podcast. And yeah, it's a pleasure. So thank you. Really feeling grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Bridget, before we get started, do you mind sharing with us where you're joining me from? And then also tell us more about who you are and why you do what you do.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually joining you today from my home city in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. And what I do is I predominantly help women that are in people-pleasing relationships and really having limiting beliefs and blocks. So, you know, this is a story that I was once a part of and lived through back in my days, working 9 to 5. And I find now I'm really in a place to liberate people that are wanting to take their power back and really create time for themselves where they are moving into real soul alignment in their life. And by having simple tools that they can use over and over again, which take less than 5 minutes a day, and create a world of opportunity and self-compassion.
I love that. I love what you do. I'm really excited for our conversation because self-love is something that we're both so passionate about, and we're going to be diving into that a bit later. And before we really get into our conversation, I always love to ask my guests this question because everyone just has their own point of view, and I just love hearing what it is. So can you tell me, Bridget, what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
Well, if my definition of an awakened feminine is really a woman that is in touch with her self-worth and able to practice that daily, and also able to, have those difficult conversations to continue to honor her own self-respect. Yeah. And that's really my idea of self-love. Is it's not only shining from the inside out and being in an aligned place, it's also really knowing when we need to have those conversations to respect ourselves and respect our boundaries, and move in a way that we do that even when things are going great, and then know that when we have those types of routines and rituals, that we can tap into those when things are not going that great, because everybody has moments and days that are not absolutely fabulous. But when we do that for ourselves, when we have that type of self-discipline, then it really makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing your definition. Let's just jump straight into self-love, because I was maybe I should ask you this question first and that question, but since we're talking about self-love, let's just dive into it and just see where the conversation goes. Because self-love for me was one of my biggest lessons on my journey, and it's such an important aspect of our lives because it affects really every single area. If you don't love yourself, if you don't look after yourself, respect your boundaries, have those difficult conversations, it's not just you getting burnt out, stressed, depressed and all that, but it affects your health, it affects your wealth, it affects your relationships, it affects your career, everything. So I want to ask you, when on your journey of life, where was that point that you went, kind of had that aha moment where you're like, I don't love myself, I need to work on this?
That's a great question. I had my story. I worked in corporate. I had a really good job. I was in that industry in the financial industry and mortgages for many, many years. I enjoyed it. I helped a lot of people. And then in September 2014, I had a massive stroke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a really serious stroke. Blood clot floating up the left side of my brain. My back two carotid arteries snapped, and I decided when I was going into the emergency and I was put through the MRI that while I was actually in there, Cocky, I actually did what they were talking about in The Secret. I was telling myself, you're going to walk again. I just had a new baby. I had another, young child. I was telling myself, you're in really good hands. You're going to be okay. And I decided while I was in the MRI that in the event that they were going to do surgery, that I was actually going to not allow it. I made a decision that I had the self-belief and the self-determination and the faith that I could actually heal myself. Now, mind you, in this story that I'm telling while I was in the MRI, I didn't know that what happened to me, I had a stroke that was that severe. So needless to say, when they brought me out and the surgeon was there, she said, oh, by the way, you had a stroke. It's really serious. We are going to start, getting you prepared for surgery. And I was just like in the movies, they were talking to me. I couldn't talk. There was saying, wink once for yes, two for no. It was like an out-of-body experience. Wow. The minute that she said surgery, I said to her, do you know what? I'm going to be okay.
You could talk.
I could talk. And she said, oh, it's really? Well, your chart doesn't say that exactly. Keep telling me more.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, I actually not only, survived that stroke, but I thrived after that. And just last year was asked to come back for the Heart and Stroke Foundation as a speaker by that same surgeon. So you would think that, having a major stroke in 2014, I'd get the concept of self-love, but that was not quite the case. And I share that because, I was a little bit ill prepared for that because I was really burning the candle at both ends. But what really kind of made it clear to me that it was time to start validating myself versus, craving external validation was really my separation that actually happened. A few years back, there I was, a single parent with 2 young children. And I thought, wow, well, here we go. I poured my life into the children, into the marriage. And so, what about me? And so I started to kind of reclaim some of my passions. I'm a global traveler, so I started traveling again. And what ended up happening, Cocky, is everywhere I went, the women that I'd meet, and I mean everywhere, all around the globe, from Greece to the US to Canada to Europe, everywhere, Costa Rica, all these places, always the women would talk about being exhausted, being burned out. And no matter how incredible their triumphs were, they rarely ever validated that or celebrated it. So this really began to precipitate the concept behind my book, which is 5-minute me time. Really.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the ladies also didn't talk about taking any time for themselves.
Yeah. I think especially as women, like as mums, especially, I mean, I've got 2 younger kids. I know you've got two kids as well. We pour everything into the kids, into the family, into the home. And then, we're, in this day and age, we also have a career that we need to pour ourselves into, and you want to have a social life, so you help all your friends, and it's just this whirlwind of things that we need to pour ourselves into, but we never pour into ourselves. So it's such a common thing, and it doesn't get talked about enough. I really believe that, self-love and self-respect, self-celebration needs to be really, be shouted from the rooftops, because it just doesn't get taught enough. It doesn't get taught at school. At school we're taught to, achieve, get the straight A's, get the good grades, be a good person, be a good student, I should say, not a good person, doing all these things that satisfy other people, but we never satisfy ourselves.
That's right. And I think that what happened really, what I gathered from my travels is that, and from myself, is, really we need to be the person that are going to be our biggest cheerleader, and really creating that self-praise for ourselves and moving inward. And when I say moving inward, what really I'm talking about when I'm talking about self-love is really coming from a place of also self-compassion. And really, really going to a place where you can practice love and kindness towards yourself.
Yeah.
And really change that paradigm in your mind, change that dynamic to really create scenarios where you can move into those places where you can create self-soothing, self-comfort, and you practice those. Just, really little meditations or little mantras or whatever it is that actually makes you feel good. We're moving at the time of this recording, we're moving into the fall, but that could just be putting your pajamas into the dryer for 2 minutes and feeling cozy with a nice cup of soup.
Yeah.
And so, we can do those things for ourselves. And I think that once we start to really realize that when we become our best friends, and that when we start to really show that kind of unconditional love towards ourselves, that's really when I think that our world begins to open even, it moves into more expansiveness and allows ourselves to connect on deeper levels.
That's beautiful. I want to touch a bit on self-compassion, because, we talk about self-love and, making sure we look after ourselves, But self-compassion, I mean, it is part of the whole self-love package. But I find not just women, men as well, that, we tend to beat ourselves up. We might just do something and it's like, oh, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. Or we have all these, negative self-talk, really. And I mean, I still catch myself, now and again doing it. It's like, oh, I should have done that yesterday. I should have done that. I needed to do like the 10 things on my list. Why didn't I do that? Now I'm like, going backwards, all those kind of things. What's a good tip for people to, have more self-compassion for themselves?
Well, I think that an easy way to kind of address that is when we are finding ourselves in a place where we are, finding that we're being a bit critical with ourselves or whatnot, is to validate that, we are human, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And that allowing ourselves to have a moment, right? And so instead of going for, these default critical conversations where, the language is continuing to be mean and beating ourselves up about something maybe, simplistic even, to really just sit with that for a moment and say, what, I'm just not feeling right, or I'm not having a good moment right now. And, really, can you sit with that?
Yeah.
And really recognizing that we're human, right? and that, all of us are, battling our own private battles, but allowing ourselves to just even have that moment.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
really approaching it in more of a compassionate way, acknowledging that, what that moment is not, you're having a tough time, or you made a mistake about something. A lot of times we get very critical on ourselves, get really, really mean with ourselves when we make mistakes, because there's always this reaching for perfection, and there's no such thing.
Yeah.
No such thing as perfection. It's a really great mentor of mine. I think it was Marissa Peer that actually talked about, perfection is like, breeding, a top horse or something. I mean, it's just all, it's all consuming, and it never ends.
Yeah.
And so when we can start to recognize that these behaviors are not in alignment to who we are, right?
Mm.
That they're actually evoking pain.
Yeah.
Just really looking at it from a different perspective, a different angle, it allows for more opening. We can be more open to a different solution.
Yeah.
Because really what we want to do is we want to feel good.
Yeah.
We want to have joy.
Yeah. So really coming from that place of love, looking at yourself, being aware of those thoughts and feelings, and really acknowledging them, but then coming from a place of love and telling yourself it's okay, and it is, you hear this a lot in personal development, is you're exactly where you're meant to be. And it is so true, in that moment, because, you won't be where you are if you didn't do all the things that happened in your life, even though sometimes it might feel like you're not where you want to be. It's just that you're not ready for that next step because you still have work to do in this moment.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that that's really leading into really the core concept of forgiveness, really forgiving ourselves. So instead of, going into these kind of mean language towards yourself, right? Yeah. Exacerbating the situation by being very judgmental on yourself and hard, being very hard on ourselves, really just forgiving ourselves in that moment. Really forgiving ourselves. And as you say, really perhaps even as a moment, if there's capacity for that, just asking, what am I learning here? Right? Because it's not what life is, doing to you. It's really about what life is trying to show you.
Yeah.
And so really coming from these different angles, having the expansiveness or the openness to have a different angle or perspective to what's happening, it really can reduce this sensation of pain and suffering.
Yeah, exactly. And with forgiveness, I find once you learn to forgive yourself, it's easier to forgive others as well. We tend to hold grudges against people because we don't forgive ourselves for all the stuff that we've done. We believe that we've done to ourselves that's not good. And a lot of times the people, yes, what they might have done is not forgivable in a sense, like it's not right what they did. Right. But you holding that, that dense energy of, holding that grudge, that anger, it actually is not, when you let it go, it's a form of self-love, because you're getting rid of that really dense and low vibrational energy inside of you, so that you can then allow yourself to open up to receive love and joy and, peace, whatever it is, all the good stuff, right? But unless you let go of that low vibrational energies, that you're holding a grudge against someone or something, you can't let those other, the good stuff in.
Yes. And I think that, it depends also on what, a person experiences, because, having the time to process that or going through that journey may be different for everybody.
Yes.
And so depending on the event or the situation that a person, really goes through, there may be, time that they need or require to go through it. And so, I also feel that when it's difficult to process those types of emotions, I am, a big advocate for finding the right coach or, therapist, or doing that type of reading or whatnot, to continue to educate ourselves, right? Because really it's our thoughts, right? It's our thoughts. And so this is the thing, is that we can change our thoughts. We can take any type of critical self-talk and we can turn it into powerful new beliefs. And then, as you're talking about the physiology and the body, right, it's also affecting the mind. And a lot of this stuff is heart-based. So when you let go, then you're opening up your heart. And then you start really moving into these higher vibrations, and you really start living your life more in alignment. And so, I'm a big advocate for self-hypnosis, just because of the work that I do. It's very, very rapid, really changing the way the mind receives information that way, right? So we take all of the stuff that you're looking for and we can put it into powerful new beliefs, and that is incredibly empowering and gives us a higher self-confidence, helps with self-esteem. And these are the things that are going to make us resilient. Also realizing that it was just a thought. And so when we get really stuck and clinging on to things, that's, taking it back to what you were talking about, that's when the pain starts really living through the body. And so we want to continue to be in movement, in momentum, in forward flow, so that we can get all the juicy stuff, right? The things that are going to give us happiness.
Yeah, love that. Ease, grace, and flow. Love it. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I mean, obviously, depending on the experience, sometimes you do need that support person, whether that's a coach, therapist, or that. We're not saying that, you need to just, click your fingers and then, make yourself better.
Get over it.
Drink some concrete. But we're just saying that, that's a process, and learning that does take time.
It does.
Some people it's quite instantaneous, but, most people it does take time.
That's right. I think that, again, it just depends on how evolved you are, right? And so it depends on your current mindset, and so the more expansive and open you become, I think that moving through these types of hurdles become easy and easier. And just going back to finding the right person, we really want to make sure that you are choosing someone that makes you feel safe. And so, that's something that people ask, and how do you know if you're talking to the right person?
I totally agree. It has to be someone that makes you feel safe, because the first coach that I had, just diverting a bit, I got a male coach. I was desperate at that time. I was depressed. I knew I needed someone, so I paid quite a lot of money for this male coach, and he was great, but he wasn't what I needed. And it was like he ripped me apart, but didn't put me back together. So then I had to go and find other ways to kind of put myself back together to heal. So it's really important to find the right person. So, so, so important. Yeah.
Yes. And I do want to ditto that story
Yeah.
It's happened to me as well.
Yeah.
I do find that, we do have to take our time. It's difficult when we're vulnerable. It's difficult when we're vulnerable. I would highly suggest that we work on feelings, because if we're getting pangs that something's not right, then it's not right. But the similar thing happened to me. I had a male coach who, was really, really quite self-centered. Right? And so it's difficult when you're going to someone for guidance and tricks and tips and advice and that kind of stuff, who is really all about themselves, right?
Yeah. And it's not because they're male. Just want to say that there are brilliant male
it's not
coaches.
Because they're male.
It's just happened that the person that I went to was a male coach.
Yes, in this particular case, myself as well. So I have also my current mentor is male. I've had many, many mentors, many, many coaches, men and women, younger, older, all over the globe. So there's no innuendo here by any means. This particular example we're talking about
just happened that we both had a male coach. Because it could be a female, whatever. So it's just so important to get the right person, really have that heart connection. That's my biggest tip, is if you don't feel that heart connection, if it doesn't feel right, then trust yourself, trust your heart. That's another self-love thing that I want to talk about, trusting your heart, because I think when you don't love yourself, that's the first thing you don't trust, right?
Yes. Well, typically, people that have been in people-pleasing dynamics or codependencies, they've been denied those feelings. So when you're starting, your life as a young person, as a child, and I would bet that your people-pleasing or codependency really started in those emotional ways when you were younger. We are denied our feelings. And so we are abandoning ourselves, and there is a break with our self-trust. So as adults, we're really rebuilding that, as we are really beginning that mind-body journey. Right. And I do agree with you, 𝐿𝐫𝐢𝐠𝐢𝐭𝐭, that's really where I feel at this stage where the significance lies, is really with your own self-trust. And so trusting, how you feel, also really being clear on your values. Because our values may not be matching with other people, and that's okay. We can agree to disagree. But if things are making us feel uncomfortable, then we need to, really look closer inside to see how we want to manage that. Just to make sure that we are feeling protected and safe. And we are really also honoring our worth, our self-value, right? And really keeping that in a high regard, because we're not about really doing, we are about being. And so, sitting with that and really recognizing that place of value is super important.
I totally agree with that. And as women especially, we don't tend to value ourselves. It's like this ingrained program that we have, that we make ourselves little, make ourselves not be valued. And it's something that that needs to really shift. And it starts with really loving yourself and believing that you're worthy. Because when you believe you're worthy, that's when you also receive more, because you believe you're worthy of receiving more. Right?
Absolutely. And I also think that, to add to that, and I 1,000,000% agree with you, is slowly, as we are going through that journey, that we begin to open ourselves up to ask So as we get clarity on ourselves, right, and we start determining the things that are going to work and not going to work with our inner circle, which includes, loved ones, husbands, the, best friends, mother-in-laws, all that, asking for what we need and what we want, because ultimately, people also can't help us if they just don't know.
Yeah. That's such a big one.
Yeah, for women can be very risky.
Yeah, that is such a big one, because asking for help is so hard for most people, because we want to be superwoman. We can do it all, and that's why we get burnt. That's why people get burnt out and stressed and depressed, because we don't ask for help. Because if we ask, it's a sign of weakness. That's what we've been taught. When in actual fact, it's a sign of strength.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that. I do really, really love that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, just having such a great conversation with you, and I don't want it to end, but we probably need to end our conversation now. But I want to ask you, before we wrap up, if you could time travel and go back to a younger version of you, having learned all the lessons that you've learned along the way, what is the most important lesson that you'll love to tell your younger self?
I would probably tell myself to, be, to have more self-love, and to make myself a higher priority, really. Yeah. To make myself a higher priority, because, when, and again, typically women and men too, when you're a giver, a taker isn't going to create a boundary. So, that's probably, for me, would be to practice more self-love. And I think that would be it. I have been a person that has, taken opportunities in my life that were presented. So in that way, I don't have a lot of regrets. However, I do feel that if I were to go back, I'd tell my younger self to make more time for myself, go into introspection, listen to your gut instinct, don't go against yourself. It's not going to work. Your body, your soul, right? It's working with you and for you. Don't turn on yourself, because you're going to regret it. Because I have done that in my life, and those regrets have been quite, ginormous.
Been there.
Right? And I'm like silly girl, and then I do it again, and and I'm like, okay, what is it that you're creating here? What do you have to keep learning? From yourself? So that's what I would say. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I love that. And I totally agree that that would be exactly what I would say to my younger self as well. Yeah, know your worth and love yourself more. Yeah. Oh, Brigitte, I just absolutely loved our conversation today. You are amazing. You're awesome. I love you. Before we go, I really want to know, can you share with us what is setting your soul on fire right now in your life?
What's setting my soul on fire right now? I feel that with the routines and the rituals that I have created over the last number of years, I'm just really, really enjoying those acts of kindness to myself. And those things are a variety of different things, I am really enjoying some sound therapy, some music therapy. There's some really great self-hypnosis tracks that I'm really into. I love my Pilates. I just, was at a class today, the movement component is really good. And I spent recently, I spent about 3 weeks in Whistler, BC, in the nature and doing some trails there. And like they say, the great Canadian outdoors. So, I think that that's very therapeutic. And occasionally, I do feel that, spoiling myself on occasion too, I embrace that. And so it feels really special when I do it. So, so it's a variety of different things.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. If people want to find out more about you and how they can work with you, where should they go?
Great. You can check out my website, and that's at Brigitte Tritt, spelled Brigitte, Tritt, Tritt.com. And, or you can check me out on Instagram, my first and last name, Brigitte Tritt, or you can pick up a small gift for for the listeners on the podcast. You can go to clearfuturenow.com and pick up an ultimate self-love action plan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brigitte. I'll have all your details and all your details and contact details in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. I had a great time. Appreciate it. Love you.
Thank you. Bye.